let's take a look at installing some pinhole can light trims. So there's one. You can see with the light turned on what these look like. I've got two installed right now. And the reason why I've installed, you can see there's not one over here. See how bright that is? A regular can light's going to light up all around. But the pin light trim helps focus the light. You might use that in something commercial. We're going to focus the light on a product or a very specific place in your house. So we've got three installed here. You can see that's what that looks like installed with the lights on. Like with any electrical or lighting project, the first step really is to cut your power. So make sure you're working without power so you don't put your finger in a socket or touch a wire and hurt yourself. So that really is step one. So the first step for me was to start up here at the can light. I'm going to first adjust this wing nut, and you can see that drops the outlet, the socket, for the light down as low as possible, and then I can retighten this. You might find, as I did, if they're not level, like if that's not flat or even bending down a little bit, that I had to pull some off and just give it not a crazy bend, but just bend it a little bit so that that part was flat facing the ground. It's important to get your light down low to get the height. The light bulb's going to go in here and it's got to touch almost your can light trim. So let's take a look at the actual can light trim. I made a mistake when I ordered these first, and I ordered just like this, but without this baffle part right here. And without that, if you don't have this baffle, what happens is the light leaks all around the edge and basically does you no good. It looks terrible. So I had to return those and get these. And this ELCO lighting kit, it comes with either a white baffle, which is this little ridge part here, this little white baffle, or a black baffle. So I got the white baffle because all the other lights in this project have white, so I want to match. So take a look at that when you order it. The white ends with a W and the black ends with a B when you're ordering, so be careful. It's a tiny little part, but it can make a difference for you. And if you don't order it with any baffle, this whole part is missing. You put your bulb in here, there's nothing really to contain the light, and it just bounces inside of here and does no good. So be careful, they're going to sell this, just this round disc by itself. So I need to grab a light bulb. I have here an MR16 light bulb. So that's what that looks like. I have a medium base because my can lights are standard 6-inch can lights with medium bases. So think about the base when you order your light. Color temperature, I'm doing 3000 K, so whatever color temperature you have in your project, that's important. And then you can check the specs. There's a distance, from the back of this light to the front, and that needs to work. That's why I had to lower the socket down in that first step to make this lower down enough that it can fit inside of here when this all comes together. So let's take a look at how that works. You can see, this is kind of baffling at first, like how does this all come together? You've got this little U-shaped spring here, and I found for me, and I wouldn't do this until you know for sure, but I actually kind of pre-loosened mine, bent it back a little bit, kind of twisted it, bent each ear back a bit, just to kind of make that a little bit bigger. And inside of this kit comes a little glass lens, so right there. And that's a UV filter. I think it's optional. You don't have to use it. I'm using it on mine, so I'm going to put that in there. But first I'm going to show you how this light goes in. It clicks in. And it's really hard to see when you've got it up in the ceiling. But basically, if this light comes in at a little bit of an angle, clicks in, and that little U-shaped spring holds it inside the baffle. And then on this side, there's an extra little tab. If I push the light further, you can see it. That little tab right there. It's inside of there. That tab, I pull it back enough, the light will pop in there. You can see it's hard to do even just with the light totally free. Click. So some effort there, and now it goes in. And you can see that that light is now up against the baffle. And the baffle shifted a little bit. That's fine, you can just center that back. And so it looks like that. And if you add the glass piece in there, that little glass lens will be in there as well. You can't screw it in assembled like this because of your springs, they can't turn while you're screwing this light bulb in. So we'll put the light bulb in first, and let's do that now. All right, so here we are back at the can light, and this is the easy step. Take your MR16 and just put it in the socket. And I forgot, I should have tightened this first before I put the light in. Get it nice and tight. That wing nut, you want it super tight so that when you're going to push up on this, you don't want that to move. As much as possible, try to get that as tight as you can. Because if you push up and this is loose, you push up on to get the spring around that light bulb, it's just going to push up and you'll be frustrated. So tighten that wing nut up good. Once your light bulb's installed, it'll look like something like this from the ground. And what I think is smart to do is to just check your light switch and make sure it turns on before you put the can light trim around it, because once that's up there, it's too late to tighten it. To take this light trim and get it into the ceiling, the first step is to use these springs. And they bend up and they go right into each of these little brackets. You can see there's a little U-shape that face each other. The springs go up into that and spread apart, and that pulls the trim right up there. So let's take this. So you can see the spring, I put one in there and I bring the other one around, bend it, and right there. That's what the spring looks like, and that's normal for almost all can lights. And I do the same for the other side. So let's do that. So I put one side in, get the wire stretch over there, a little more, and right into there. So now that side and this side over here both have the spring. And now the light just hangs there. You can see that we've got to close the gap. We've got this light bulb, the MR16, needs to attach here. We've got our glass lens in there, which again is, I think is optional, but I'm going to put it in there. Came with it, I'm going to use it. So I put the glass lens in there flat, and you can see I've got this U-shaped spring here in the back. I've got to get around the light bulb first. And in front, you can see this little hole. There's a tab that you got to get around the front part of the bulb, if you can, at the end. So I start to work this up towards the bulb, and I want to get the bulb kind of there. And you can see what I'm doing. You see that tab there? Put that up behind the bulb. And I just did that and kind of pushing it. There's the tab. If I pull it back down, you can see there's the tab. As I push back, push it behind the bulb. Now that's just one side. If I spin around here, I can see the other tab. The other tab here is right in front of the bulb. So once I am confident one is behind, that's the easier one, I've got to move this whole apparatus back and then try to push it up at the same time and get it behind that bulb. Bam, like that. Because now the spring is behind the bulb, and I can kind of push up on the whole apparatus. So there it goes. That one went pretty easy, and I did it by kind of pushing up on the whole apparatus and enough pressure. You know, if you heard it click, it clicked behind that tab. And there it is. Now that lens is flush, it's sitting against the glass, and it's all installed and looks nice. There it is. And I could turn on the light and see it in action. It's working great. So the part I want to emphasize the most is you've got to get this light firm. Because I'm pushing on it right now and it doesn't really go up. That's critical. If I push on this and it moves, you'll never get this light to seat firmly. You'll never get the spring on, or if you do, you can't get the tab on the other side. So that's critical. And a couple tricks I used to get that. I actually had two different kind of can lights here, and one, see where this wing nut is? It actually had another threaded bolt here, and I moved the wing nut down and tightened it here. That gave it more leverage. Up here, it's right at the fulcrum point. It doesn't help as much as putting it down here. So I did that on the other can lights. This one didn't have that, so it did have this metal tab, and it was poking straight out, and I used a screwdriver and bent it over to give it more support down lower. So what did I need to do this project? First, I needed light bulbs. If you're getting halogens, this would be an MR16 equivalent. In LED, it's called a par 16, and that 16 equals the degree of the cast of the light. So if it said like par 50, that's like a 50 degree, a big wide angle. This is narrow. And so probably for this, you're gonna need a par 16 or a par 15 are less common, but they have those as well. And that's an LED. Or you can get the halogen. They're called MR16s or MR15s. I needed a pinhole trim, so I got mine from ELCO Lighting, and I got the EL-2579W. The W stands for the white baffle inside, or it would say B for black if you want the black baffle inside. I needed some sort of gloves. These are latex gloves, which are about the worst, but they are easy and cheap and they work. They also have some disposable fabric gloves you can find sometimes that could be good. But you don't want to get fingerprints in anything, and you don't want to cut your fingers from the sheet metal. And for safety gear, also some safety glasses, because you're working with metal with some springs on it, and you're also staring up at the ceiling. You don't want drywall to fall on your eyes, so some safety goggles. And as far as actual tools, you don't need a ton. I used some pliers to get the wing nuts, and these are adjustable pliers, so they can be tighter, close all the way, or they can adjust open and not close all the way, and that helps you adjust those wing nuts up inside the can light if you need to. And you might need to use a screwdriver. So I've got a screwdriver here I used on this project. One thing to note is you do not want to use a screwdriver on anything painted that could get ruined. And so I really like to have these. These are actually for car work. These are car trim removers, plastic trim removers, used to pop out your dashboard or get to a car stereo or something. But they're just little plastic tools, and I like to have a whole kit of these, different tips. You can use that if you got to poke at something, but you don't want to ruin it because the screwdriver will scratch it, it will dent it. Don't poke at anything with a screwdriver. Get something plastic. And you don't want to use a plastic spoon or knife because that's going to pop and flip back in your eyeball. They're not very strong. This is plastic that gets down to a pretty fine point, but it's also strong. You can put a lot of pressure on it and it won't break so easily as something like a plastic fork. So those are the tools I used. Now, if you're watching this video just to change the bulb or to take one of these out, I found that just like a can light, if you pull on this and wiggle it a little bit, it pops out like that. So if you're worried about taking it out again, it's not a big deal. You really just pull down on this, would jiggle it a little bit, and it pops right out. You see the spring? That's why it's a spring, so you can just pull it right out. Not too hard to take it out, change the bulb. Putting it back, that's the hard part. We got to get this stuff to kind of click in there and then click in that tab. A little tricky when this thing is held fixed and you're standing on a ladder trying to do that and you can't really see but anything through that little hole. Hope this helps you. Have fun. If you're watching this video, you're probably doing some pretty cool lighting. Love to hear what you're doing down in the comments, and I'll post some links to these products that I used, and have a good time.